Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show, highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyles, community, and neighborhood. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
We, as we enter the fall season, we're going to spend our entire show today talking about one of the highlights of the fall season, and it's great that it comes early in the fall because there's so much activity in Moore County once Labor Day comes and goes.
Yeah.
Every weekend there is something going on. We're going to be talking today about the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series. Mm-hmm. It's presenting its 31st season of speakers. You might remember a couple of years ago, there was a lot of publicity in the paper when Jack Nicklaus came and spoke.
Yes.
And I looked at and my brother, who lives up in the Northeast, said, "How did you get Jack Nicklaus to come?"
That's what I'd like to know.
Well, the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series, we're going to talk about Ruth Pauley, about the history of the series, the inspiration for it, and we're going to be speaking today with 3 guests. Okay. John Arnold, who is the program chair, Wilma Laney from the League of Women Voters. She is the vice chair of the lecture series, and Catherine Murphy from Moore County Schools, the director for communications. Mm-hmm. This series is celebrating its 31st year in presenting nationally known, thought-provoking speakers. And they're going to be speaking today not just about the history of the event, but about the 5 featured speakers. And since 1987, the series has been providing residents of the Sandhills and surrounding areas a roster of renowned thinkers, statesmen, artists, and other experts at no charge. And we want to talk about the at no charge aspect of it, too, because when I saw that, my jaw dropped.
That is kind of amazing.
The series seeks to deepen our understanding of key issues facing society and encourage public participation in their resolution. John, that doesn't sound like the nightly news that we are subjected to these last 2 years with soundbite after soundbite and opinion after opinion. This is a very civilized and focused event, isn't it?
We try to be, but every now and then we get some people in the question and answer period who have a lot to say and a lot to ask.
How did you get involved with the series? Tell me a little bit about how you evolved to where you are today.
I knew someone who was on the board, and they invited me, but I've always been interested in public affairs and education, politics, and that sort of thing. And I'd been to many of the lectures and found them fascinating, and so it's something I wanted to do.
I didn't know until just this morning that you were an educator.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Do you want to? He's going to blush.
Education background.
Yes.
Not my sordid past, no.
No. But, I mean, you have a pretty distinguished career.
Well, I'll mention 3 things.
Okay.
I ended up as a professor at North Carolina State University, and I came to North Carolina to help start the middle school program in the state of North Carolina. There were only junior high schools before then.
Right.
And before that, I was a teacher and principal at Sidwell Friends School in Washington. And also I've been a consultant in children's television with Nickelodeon and Disney and several others.
And always so humble.
Just you wait.
Catherine Murphy from Moore County Schools, good morning.
Good morning.
For people who might not know, Sidwell, the school that he mentioned, you were just referencing some of the people who have attended that school in Washington.
Yes, that's true. It's a beautiful school, beautiful campus in Northwest Washington. Chelsea Clinton attended, as well as the Obama children. I believe the younger one is still there.
Yep.
And also Nixon's children attended that school, and I believe there was one other president. Was it Theodore Roosevelt's?
Teddy Roosevelt,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
not George Bush. No, I guess not. She was George Bush's kids were probably too old at the time when he was
I think so,
president.
yeah.
Okay. Catherine, you've been with Moore County Schools for how long?
Just over a year.
Are you a native of the area?
No, I'm not.
Where are you from?
I moved down here from Washington, D.C., that
Okay.
area,
What-
Arlington, Virginia, actually.
And what brought you here? The school system?
My parents retired here about 10 years ago, and then my brother relocated here. So an opportunity came up at Moore County Schools, but in Washington, I worked for Gallaudet University, which is the world's only four-year liberal arts university for the deaf.
Wow. So you got involved with the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series because the Moore County Schools, we're going to find out today, take a big part in the series as well. There's a
Yes, actually, I think along with a couple of other organizations, we're one of the primary sponsors of the series. So I represent the schools on the board.
okay, and Wilma Laney, I want to introduce you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you are here representing the League of Women Voters.
That's correct.
You're also a sponsor of the series.
Yes.
Are you a native of Moore County?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Would you like to?
Inquiring minds want to know where you're from.
Okay. I came down here from New Jersey,
Whereabouts?
Somerset, New Jersey.
Know it very well.
And before that, I lived in New York City, and I moved to New Jersey. And I was with MCI, WorldCom,
Okay.
Global Communications,
Okay.
and I was a database system specialist.
Who wants to tell me a little bit about Ruth Pauley herself? She passed away in 1986, but she left a very strong mark on the Moore County area, didn't she?
Wilma has been on the board longer than anyone,
Uh-huh.
so she'd be a good one to.
Well, I'll tell you the things that I know. I think the two of us came on around the same time. But Ruth Pauley was from Ohio. She
That's
was
right.
a native of Youngstown, Ohio.
Right.
And she worked in Cleveland. And I can remember my Aunt Wilma lives in that area. So, I kind of think of maybe my Aunt Wilma saw her at one time.
Right.
But then she moved here in 1978. But what she did, she was mostly social worker, and she spent some time in Germany and Italy before coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. She was a trailblazer in many ways and ahead of her time, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. She was interested in world peace, and the first lecture series they started was about the arms race. I think there was 6 in the series, and she got very prominent people that knew what they were talking about, very knowledgeable people to do the series, and it seems like it really caught on. She did a very good job, so it caught on, and so when she passed away, that's how it started, and then it was her friends wanted to honor her, and they did that by starting the lecture series.
For people who, the demographics in Moore County have changed so much in the last 10 or 15 years. For people who might not be aware of the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series, let me just read just a couple of the past speakers that have been here. It shocked me when I read it. Maya Angelou, Patty Duke, David Gergen, Newt Gingrich, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
Jane Goodall.
Jane Goodall, George McGovern, Ralph Nader, Jack Nicklaus. I mean, this is just to name a few, and I'm not denigrating anyone else on this list, but I looked at, and my jaw dropped. Julian Bond, Frank DeFord, who I think just recently passed away, and they've all come to Moore County, and they've all, who bears the cost of this, bringing these people here to speak, because there's no charge to the public. It's a first come, first served basis.
Well, happily, some people come free because
I would hope, yeah.
because we know someone, or we know someone who knows someone, and they will ask them. And some of these people, command huge fees if they were charging us.
Sure.
But they come out of the goodness of their heart, and we're very fortunate that way. But we also have a very limited amount of money. We have 4 relatively small endowments, and we get maybe $2,000 or $3,000 a year from each of the 4 endowments. And we get some money from program ads, and then we have donors who contribute every year. And every once in a while, we'll have a special gift by someone who would like someone to speak here.
Wow. And the series is held at the Owens Auditorium at Sandhills Community College.
That's correct.
Has it always been there? I don't think it's always been there, has it?
I don't believe so.
When Nicklaus was here, did he not speak at Weymouth? I'm trying to. Was it at the Sandhills?
I'm pretty sure it was, but they had overflow rooms and closed circuit TV, I think.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. David Broder was here. Where have I been? The purpose, the mission of the series is to deepen society's understanding of key issues and encourage public participation in their resolution. If that's been the mission statement all these years, could it possibly have more? It couldn't possibly have more application than it does today.
I just wanted to kind of jump in and say I spoke to Jane McPaul last night, and she knew Ruth Pauley, and I wanted to call her and talk to her, and she told me that the theme, the original theme for this was think globally,
Yep.
and act locally. And I thought that was so great, and I told her how great that was.
That is a very good. I've heard that in different ways before.
Yeah.
Think globally and act locally.
I want to pick up on you saying this is timely,
Very
because
timely.
there's so much nonsense and rumor and emotional talk.
I can't
Much
have
of it uninformed. One of our third speaker is going to be Joel Achenbach, who is going to talk. I love his title.
I saw that.
It's about fake news, but what the exact title is Surviving the Age of Fake News, Pseudoscience, Bunk, and Nonsense.
Right.
And Joel has also written a very seminal article on the war against science. So he's a very knowledgeable guy. He's a reporter from the Washington Post. Has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
He's going to speak on, what's the date there, November?
That would be November 9th
Yeah.
at 7:30.
Yeah. There are going to be 5 speakers in the series.
Yes.
Okay. And this is going to run from September the 12th through
March 20.
Okay.
And all of them will be held at Owens Auditorium at the community college, and all will begin at 7:30.
Okay. So people want to go. It's free to the public. So I want to go. I pick up the phone. I want to come. What do you tell me?
You don't have to pick up the phone.
I don't?
You just come.
What if I'm the 880th person and this seating is only for 860?
We'll all applaud.
Yes, yes.
We would love to sell out all the time. I think the auditorium seats, how many, 700, something like that?
Okay.
I think so.
But we would love to fill it. We have filled it, but we don't always.
Well, so the speakers come and it starts at 7:30, but there's also an after speech. There's a give and take, questions and answers.
That's right.
Audience participation.
Yes.
And then there's a piece of the puzzle also where the students get involved.
Oh, that's right. That's
Catherine?
called our Lyceum Scholars Program.
Okay.
And basically, what's nice about the speakers is they each agree to visit one of the high schools during the day, and they might give a lecture to the student body. And then in the evening, 2 students from each high school, and that includes all 3 of the Moore County Schools high schools, as well as the O'Neill and the Sandhills Hoke, will come and attend dinner with the speaker before the presentation, and then attend the presentation. And they are also awarded a small stipend to be able to take a class the following summer at Sandhills Community College. So it's a nice program for them.
Yeah.
So we're always very excited when we're able to have some. I mean, think about some of these speakers that you just named walking through our high school.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing. So it's just a great opportunity for them.
And those can be indelible impressions for kids of that age to have been, and they'll never forget it. I mean, you can probably remember things that happened to you while you were in 5th and 6th grade, like it was just yesterday. So this is something the kids get to take with them.
I mean, if you think about it, it's not often that you get someone on the level of Sandra Day O'Connor walking through a public high school in rural North Carolina. It doesn't happen every day. So
That's right.
we consider ourselves very lucky to be able to be a beneficiary of the program.
Just a quick human
John,
interest story.
please.
The main way we got Sandra Day O'Connor was she likes to play golf, and John Dempsey, the head of the community college,
You bribed her, huh?
bribed her, yes.
You got her down here and got
Yes.
her a couple of tee times.
Yeah, and John said she would not give him a 2-foot putt.
We're going to come back in the second set. We're going to speak about the series sponsors, the American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters, the Moore County School System, and the Sandhills Community College. The 4 elements that go together create a very vibrant event for the citizens of Moore County, and we hope as a result of today's show that more people are aware of the series, and the timing couldn't be better. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set. We're talking about the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series today. It's presenting its 31st season, and its first meeting is September the 12th. There are a series of 5 speakers that will run from September the 12th through March of 2018, and we talked a little bit about Ruth Pauley and the connection with Moore County. With 5 speakers and with this impressive list of past speakers, John, how does the process work where speakers are invited to come?
We have a committee appointed by the board of 5 or so people, it varies. And we meet together, and first thing we do is brainstorm what topics we think are particularly relevant at this time.
Right.
And also names of potential speakers that people are aware of. Also, we get sent names from board members and people who attend the lectures. And I just might add right now, anyone listening who has an idea for a speaker, especially if they have a connection with them,
Right.
please let us know.
Right.
And we look at speakers bureaus. Unfortunately, they're usually pretty expensive, but occasionally we get someone from there. We have certain topics that we are required from our endowments to cover, or to address rather. We're required to have something on the environment, and something on mental health, and something on literature or the news, and the others are open. But there's a lot of leeway in interpretation of what actually fits those categories.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we start putting out feelers
Mm-hmm.
and writing letters. Lots of times you have to work through agents or speakers bureaus, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And we eliminate a lot of people right off the bat. We find they're way too expensive, or nobody has any connection with them. And we keep whittling it down until we get some viable people, and then we look for balance. And of course, appeal is important. Sometimes we could probably get people who would draw a big crowd, but we don't think they have a whole lot that's relevant to say, and that gets tricky.
You make me think about the TED Talks, the TED conferences,
Yeah.
TED speakers, forward-thinking think tanks. Maybe this is similar to that.
Well, we actually review a lot of TED Talks.
Do you?
Yeah, unfortunately, most of those speakers are too expensive for us, but every now and then we get one. As a matter of fact, our first speaker gave a TED Talk, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. Then we get board approval then for our series, and
It's amazing to me, in a county like Moore County, you can have this type of an event happening over the course of 5 months. Culturally, socially, there is so much more going on in Moore County than when I first moved here in 1999 and 2000. What a different community we live in. And there's and with the demographics getting younger and more families, there's just a whole new vibrancy here. I bet you the speakers love coming here. I bet you they say this is one of the things they enjoy doing more than many of the engagement that they have during the course of a year. There's something about this community that endears them.
I think that's true to a certain extent. Some people, of course, don't know anything much about us, but others do. And as I mentioned, every now and then we'll get someone who wants to come to play golf.
Right.
Or it's an attractive place, obviously.
Tell me about Chuck Collins is going to launch the series on September 12th. This is as timely as it can be, reversing wealth inequality.
That's right. Chuck Collins is an interesting guy.
Okay.
He is actually the great-grandson of Oscar Mayer. So he was born into what a lot of people refer to as the 1%, the wealthy 1% of our society.
Uh-huh.
He grew up in Detroit, in sort of some of the Tony suburbs there. He went to private school with Mitt Romney. But at the age of 26, he gave away his entire inheritance. And then for the next 30 years, he studied, wrote about, and examined the growing disparity in wealth and income in our society. So he will be speaking about the case for restoring progressive taxation and bringing wealth home. So he has a lot of really interesting ideas related to this. He's a senior scholar at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington.
Right.
And his most recent book is Born on Third Base.
Yep.
So
We actually talk about that a lot on the show. There are people, the joke is, and I was late to the game. Some people are born in third base and act like they hit a triple to get there,
Yeah.
and they didn't. And it's funny, in Moore County, we also always talk about the northern and the southern parts of the county and how different they are. And in the Moore
County,
County,
in the schools.
Oh my gosh, it's it's alive and well here. You live in southern Moore County, and sometimes you're inculcated from anything that's the underside.
And I think also to that end, the Born on Third Base quote,
Yeah.
and Mr. Collins talks about it in his book, basically, even though he gave away all of his wealth, you're still enjoying the privileges that came along with being born into that class. So the social networks, the social the connections that you have, the good health care that you received growing up, the good education, those are things that you can't give away. You just acquire that over time. And as the gap grows between the 1%, as the wealth continues to sort of consolidate towards the top of the pyramid, and then the middle class seems to start to fall under that threshold of what would be the middle class.
Yeah.
You start to see that growing disparity, and what kind of impacts does that? His theories and his discussions really center on what are the impacts on our society with that growing disparity, and what are some of the ways that the 1% can do to, quote, what he refers to as come home and be a part of their communities again and help to rectify this imbalance in our society, which can be detrimental to have such wild polarization in our wealth and our income. So it's fascinating theories he presents.
We've had the Barrett Walker from the Coalition has been a frequent guest on the show. And she talks about, there's a book, and I forget the author's name, Generational Poverty. And it talks about how people are born from one generation to another into poverty, how they can never rise above, and the different classes of generations, as far as wealth goes, they have a whole different set of rules, of expectations in their lives. And it's fascinating, but I have a feeling that Chuck Collins is very well familiar with generational poverty. So this is what his life's work has become.
One interesting thing about him, too, is that he's been very much involved with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and he co-authored a book with Bill Gates, and he has been instrumental in setting up the so-called billionaires club who are pledging to give their money away.
Right.
And so he'll probably have some very interesting stories to tell about that, I would think.
Yeah. He'll be here on the 12th of September, and then there'll be a question-answer period afterwards. Pretty spirited from what John, you were
Sometimes, yeah.
intimating.
I think he will get a lot of spirited comments.
Okay.
With this topic, yes.
On October 4th, just a couple of weeks later, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson will present Love and Happiness, oh boy, a fresh research-based perspective on an age-old topic. I'd love to hear about her.
Well, I didn't go through all of these, but
Right.
this is one that I'm really looking forward to hearing, because to me it's just an unusual speaker, because she's talking about how our ancestors, the love and how we came down through the ages, and the positive part of it versus it's positive when you're like that, and the negative part of not showing love and compassion. So I'm looking forward to hearing her, because I've never had I just wasn't aware of a subject like this. It's just very different. I felt it was a very different subject.
Mm-hmm.
She speaks from an evolutionary point of view, how positive emotions are adaptive and
Right.
negative are not.
I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of students, in the Moore County schools, and through a lot of the brokers in my office that have kids, just people that I know, and it's amazing with this young generation. There's a sense of entitlement out there today, and so their idea about love, it's romantic love, and what comes out of the mouth of a 17-year-old. It's crazy. They just have this very cushy, protected vision of what love is and what it means. And this is just a much bigger picture view, obviously.
Well, she's a very distinguished professor at Chapel Hill, and one of the very best researchers on this topic in the world. And we're very fortunate to be able to get her.
Wow, she's been featured in the New York Times, Sunday Magazine, CNN, PBS, U.S. News and World Report, at USA Today.
Yeah, she's.
Wow. Let's come back in the third set. Want to speak about a couple of the other people that will be here for the lecture series. We're talking all about the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series starting this September 12th at the Owens Auditorium at Sandhills Community College. We'll be right back.
Our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening, and it's usually quite...
Welcome back to our final set. We're talking all about the Ruth Pauley Lecture Series. It's approaching its 31st season. This is something to be passionate about. This event, these kind of speakers are coming to Moore County every year, huh? For 31 years. What do you tell people who maybe were not aware of it? They need to come. It's moving. They don't have to sit at their home and go online and look at the news. They can come and share with other people, whether they agree with or don't agree with. You have different people with different political persuasions and all different persuasions, but there's a connection that happens with these speakers.
Well, we certainly would like to have a lot more people come.
Right.
We don't fill up Owens Auditorium. We have good crowds. We have
Right.
300 to 500 people, but we would love to fill it every time. And they are really good, knowledgeable people, and I think there's a lot to be gained. And we need to get the word out. We do the best we can through the newspapers and
Right.
radio and so on. But
Right. And the pilot's been a great
yes,
source of information.
Yes, and the pilot, actually, they're one of our sponsored lecture series, the Gergen lecture, which will sponsor our first speaker.
And you have a Facebook page. People can just type in Ruth Pauley Lecture Series, and they can keep tabs on what's going on with the event and coming up. And the website is ruthpauley.org, O-R-G?
ORG, that's right.
Okay. I think this is exciting, and we don't have a lot of this in Moore County. There are a lot of activities that go on, but there's nothing quite like this. It's like a symposium, and it's 2 miles from your front door.
And it's free.
And it's free. I still can't get over free. We've talked, you mentioned the speaker who's going to be here on November the 9th. A very compelling topic, surviving the age of fake news. Joel Achenbach. But you also have a guest coming on the 8th of February, Heather Mcgee. Can you tell me a little bit about what her dialogue is about?
Well, she's a very, very interesting person. She was on C-SPAN, and she's on a lot of news shows.
Uh-huh.
She was on C-SPAN, and a guy from North Carolina named Gary Civitello called in, and he said, "I'm a racist, and it's making me sick, and I want to be a better person, and I want to be a better American. Can you help me?" And she was amazingly compassionate with him and said something like, "Thank you for your honesty, and if everyone were as honest as you, we could get a lot farther in this country with race relations." After the show, she called him. They've had an email correspondence, and she's visited him twice. So he is going to join her for a Pauley lecture.
Oh, wow.
And She's head of a think tank. She's a very distinguished, bright, brilliant person, and she's going to be talking about race relations and what we can do to heal.
You hit the mark on all of these speakers for things that are timely.
I hope so.
As we sit here today, and I mean her talk, "A Better America: Facing Prejudice Honestly." The truth of the matter is, there are people who are prejudiced and don't even think they are. They don't know it. She's been on Meet the Press, Hardball. She writes for the New York Times, The Nation, and The Hill. So she's very well versed, and I think that's great that you got her to come.
Yeah, we're delighted.
And March 20th, now we're going into next spring, Dr. Terry Phoenix. Wow, you guys are all over it. Exploring gender, identity, and sexual orientation. That's on the tip of the news these days, too. This is not a political show where I have to always keep my big mouth shut, and I have to be very careful. But everything that you guys are highlighting is something you can look at today.
Well, we heard Terry Phoenix on the Frank Stasio radio program.
Oh, on NPR.
And
Yeah.
she did extremely well there. And this is a topic that we feel almost all of us are not very well versed in, and we hope she can enlighten us a lot. She's head of the LGBTQ Center at Chapel Hill, and has had a wide variety of experiences, both political and social, and I think it's going to be a very informative talk.
You know, the news cycle changes so quickly every week that everything that you're talked about today are things that are in today's news. And God knows what's going to happen in 4 or 5 months. I mean, but all of this stuff has been out for us all to see, and everyone has an opinion. And where do they get most of their information? From sound bites. I'm sure Joel Achenbach is going to have something to say about that, as to right what's fake and what's not fake. We didn't talk at all about the American Association of University Women, and I'm not familiar with that organization.
Well, the association is for women that have a associate's or a bachelor's degree,
Right.
To join, and they try to help women. You know, they're trying to show that women are, can just do anything that anybody else can do. So it's, I don't know a great deal about it, but
Okay.
I do know that it's an organization for the women that are, any woman that has that degree can join. And they are focused on women too.
In 9 years of doing the show, I've had students on, both boys and girls, and to this day, I cannot understand how they're the same age, how they're in the same grade. The girls are always so much more advanced, so much quicker, so much more socially adept. I look at an 8th grade boy and an 8th grade girl, and it's like talking to two different. I mean, the girls just have. They seem to have a head start as far as capability goes, and it's a different world than what we grew up in the 70s. But girls are stepping forward either through sports or through creativity, through stage, through the arts. It's a different generation today, and it's empowering women, I think, from a very young age.
It is, but we have a long way to go with this.
Yeah.
And it's good that we have organizations out there that are,
Right.
Trying to bring everybody on the same level. I think that, the young girls that are coming up now are going to be a little better off because of this, because there are so many organizations out there now. And then we've broken a few glass ceilings. So I think we almost broke one last year, not quite, but
I'm still in therapy.
Yeah, I had to get that in. But I think we will.
Me too. Thank you.
We will. I think we will. We'll break some glass ceilings.
Yeah. Is there? Are you permitted to shoot videos of the series? Is that something that's banned?
Well, there's you have to sign a paper when you're when they ask you to speak, that you will let the college has the rights to whatever you do, but you can opt out of the taping. I think I was told that because I had to sign that paper, that Maya Angelou, I think, is the only one that did not allow any taping. They have all these they have tapings of all of these audio videos in the library, and you can go in there and sit down and listen to them, because I thought about doing that, because there's a lot of them that I'd love to have seen and I didn't get to see them.
Let me clarify that a little bit. The speakers, when they sign their contract, sign a waiver that they will allow certain taping or not. Almost none will allow live taping or something to go on YouTube.
Right.
What they do allow is for us to make a recording, and keep it in the library or send it to assisted living places.
Okay.
But we can't just use it.
Okay. Catherine, in the Moore County schools, is there an effort to get some of the students to attend these series? Yeah.
Yeah, as I was mentioning, the Lyceum program.
Yes.
So the speakers, when they come to do their presentation that day, they will go visit one of the high schools.
Okay.
And they will speak to the student body. And then, so that's a really nice opportunity for a lot of the students who might not be able to go to the lecture that night to see our speakers. And then 2 students from each of the high schools are invited to have dinner with the presenter, which is a real treat.
That would be right.
And then they stay for the presentation.
But there's nothing that would prevent a couple of students, juniors or seniors in high school, to go with their parents. I mean,
it's
to
open to
attend.
the public.
Open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
When Lynn Elmore spoke last year, the all-time great basketball player and a news commentator, and the only person with a law degree from Harvard, from the NBA.
Right.
When he spoke, the football coach from Pinecrest brought 70 of his players there en masse to hear Lynn Elmore speak. So.
Right. I hope that happens this year. There's just an opportunity for people. There's so many generations living in Moore County, 4 or 5. Wilma?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I wanted to mention the participation of the students.
Yep.
We have some groups that during the question and answer period, the students just ask a lot of questions, and that's really great. That's a really great part of it.
The Ruth Pauley Lecture Series starts on the 12th of September. It will run through March of next year. It'll be the 31st season. All the speakers will be attending at the Sandhills Owens Auditorium, and they start at 7:30 each evening with a follow-up question and answer period.
And a reception after, book signing and reception.
We're going to put on our podcast, we're going to feature a podcast for the show. People can go to Facebook under Ruth Pauley Lecture Series to keep tabs on what each speaker is going to be, each event will feature. They can go to the ruthpauley.org website and get a little more information. And this year, more than people are so tuned in, whether their information they're getting is correct or not, maybe the timeliness of all these topics will yield a much higher audience. We hope.
I hope so. One thing before we end.
Yep.
We should mention the Sandhills Community College.
By all means.
They have, they're really a backbone of our program. They provide the auditorium. They have the cooking staff and so on for our dinners. They just do an enormous amount, and they're very supportive. Some of the faculty are on our board, and we wouldn't be able to do this series without them, for sure.
Yeah, the Sandhills Community College has become such a major part of Moore County. They touch so many different lives, and it just seems like in the last 8 or 10 years they have just blossomed. John Dempsey has been at the forefront, and I think they're very proud to associate with the Ruth Pauley series.
No, they are indeed. He's been a huge backer of the series right from the get-go.
Right.
As was Dr. Stone, his predecessor.
Yep.
He was one of the founders, I believe, of the series.
Yeah.
The hope is that the Ruth Pauley series will educate, stimulate, and entertain people throughout the Sandhills. And it truly is one of the real joys of living here, that this is at our front door, and we just hope more people become aware and attend. So I want to, Wilma Laney, thanks for coming. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
And Catherine Murphy, now I put the name with the face.
Thank you.
From Moore County Schools, it's a pleasure to meet you.
You too.
And John, I'm so glad you came by the office and asked to come on. This is it's an important show.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate all the time and effort you put into this. And I hope it helps.
It will help. And we'll get the podcast out there as well as soon as we can. Thank you so much. This is All Things Moore County. We'll talk to you next week.
She's the one they're going to miss in lots of ways.